Howdy peeps, hope we're doing well. It's been a while since I've actually uploaded a video. I've actually done plenty. I've been caught out by usual sort of tricks like, runs out of power, this sort of a thing, and then cuts me off at the wrong time, and I'm just like, you know what, I'm so done with it. So I tend to not upload anything for a while. This is usually the reason. That, and I've had other stuff going on in my life as well, which, I don't know, content creating hasn't really been the top of my priorities recently. That being said, I have got plenty to talk about. And I'm going to sort of relate it back a little bit to the last video that I did, which was of Mgtow and incels and society, in where I was talking about that young lad that lost the plot and went out and caused a bit of a atrocity, should I say. What doesn't really get spoken about, or it gets spoken about, but that's just it, it's as far as it ever goes. People just talk amongst themselves rather than to the people that need to be spoken to. And this is also a two-way street, whether the other person is going to listen. Now, unfortunately, in my opinion, a lot of people are so wrapped up in themselves that even when you tell them that, what they're doing might not be in their best interests, whether that be it might alter their mental health in some way, shape or form, they're doing something, or they're acting in a way that is counterproductive to their mental well-being. Obviously mental health has been something that's been on the rise for the last year, and we all know why. Something about psychopaths telling everyone to stay indoors and not socialise, and yeah. Now, one of the topics that I've covered a lot recently, over the years, has been that of people with personality disorders, in particular borderline. And apparently this month it's BPD month. Now I get it, this is something that affects people on a scale, right? Some people aren't so affected by it, other people are greatly affected by it. But the one thing that a lot of these people that say they suffer from, I'll correct that, they don't say they suffer from, is personal accountability and responsibility for the way they treat other people, for the way they deal with situations. And a lot of the sort of things that come out with this is, oh, my anxiety this, right? I can't do this because anxiety. I can't do that because depression. I would be a bit more brutal and honest. No, you can't do these things because you don't want to do these things, because it means putting in actual real effort. And one of the things that kind of does really grind my gears on that is this thing of, oh, I can't do this because of my anxiety. Let me tell you something about a bit of anxiety, right? Anxiety is something that I've suffered with in the past, and I've kind of learnt to get over things in my own way. They may not be totally practical all the time, and sometimes they may be a little bit self-destructive, but I do make sure that they happen in a closed scenario where my thoughts or my actions would affect those around me, whether it's friends, family, or just out in a social setting. Anxiety for me these days, when people tell me, oh yeah, I suffer with anxiety, a picture that goes through my head, right, one of the ones that was come about recently was someone was telling me how they suffer with social anxiety. And I sort of thought to myself, you suffer with social anxiety, and it's like, oh, I can kind of relate to a degree, but I don't have a social anxiety. I just haven't got much time for people, because of my experiences. That doesn't make me anxious about it. Now, to me, anxiety would be being put on a boat. I want you to listen carefully here before anyone gets the wrong idea. Being put on a boat where you're going to be taken to a shore where as soon as you jump off that boat, you're getting shot at. That, to me, would equate to having a legitimate reason for having a issue with anxiety. I am obviously referring this back to the 1930s, 1940s, World War II era, right? I'd also very much so understand it if someone told me that they had anxiety because they had to jump out of a plane and land on enemy ground, getting shot at, not being able to speak the language, and not knowing where the rest of your teammates are. That is the perfect setting for someone to say that they have anxiety, and it would be totally understandable. But then again, we're not dealing with people with these borderline personality disorders. And I think I'm going to be a little bit cold and callous in this video, I think, to some people, and what they sort of view on things. So I'm actually going to try and find this post that's been doing the rounds on social media, and I'm going to just give my 2 cents on it. He says as soon as I can find it. Okay, so, and this is actually, you know what, I've made a mistake. This month is not BPD Awareness Month, right? This is from back in May 2020, so it's well over a year ago. And the post reads, since it's BPD Awareness Month, I thought I'd share this. BPD is super stigmatised and nearly impossible to understand unless you're living with it. You should try living with someone that has it. And if you think what the individual goes through, the person that has that air quotes disorder versus the person living with someone that has that disorder, you will see that one's hell is worse than the other. And the one with BPD, their hell isn't so much of a thing a lot of the time. No, unfortunately a lot of the time it's just histrionic, it's just drama. Self-inflicted, self-created, and often enough put out there for the sake of a bit of validation, getting some attention. And like I said before, I think that the majority of people that have BPD, I think, is women. And look, that's just my personal opinion. I'm not necessarily correct. I'm just going on what I see as a casual observer of life. I've dealt with the symptoms of borderline personality disorder since I was little. And again, this is something that a lot of clinical physicians, a lot of the time they do relate back to some form of childhood trauma. But I'm not going to go into all of that. I kind of, in a way, I ignorantly expect you to sort of know a bit about these personality disorders, right? Like many, I got misdiagnosed at a young age, and it took years to find out what was really going on. Through short-term and long-term treatment facilities, the correct medications and dialectical behavioural therapy, and conversing with others dealing with it, I have been able to manage this disorder. This doesn't define me, nor does it tell you what kind of person I am. Well, there's the two great untruths right there. You see, the personality disorder and how that person conducts themselves to the people around them does define them. And like I said in videos of the past, it's like sometimes it's like you got to kind of really wonder whether, or well, not wonder, but you actually have to look into if you're willing to put the time and effort in the first place. So a lot of people will just drop these people and just ignore them and just carry on with their life and go and meet other people, which is great for them. And of course, in doing that, then the other person will, you get the usual sort of like resentment and anger and more histrionics, like, you know, oh, you don't understand me. It's like, no, a lot of people understand them perfectly and they just don't want to deal with their bullshit. That's what it comes down to. And it does most definitely define what kind of person they are. You see, what that is they're just trying to take away all accountability for all of their fuckery, that the bad things that they do to others. Right, that's what it comes down to. And I'm talking about legitimately bad things that they do. You know, the smear campaigns, the you know, the muddying the water, the character assassination of another person within that social group. And well, look, it happens. And from my observations, women are the worst for it. Now, the difference with that between men and women is, look, you meet a guy that you don't necessarily see eye to eye with. A lot of the time, you're going to walk away because you're not going to deal with their bullshit, right? Because it's just like, why bother? In a worst case scenario, it will come to a confrontation. You might have a physical altercation. And a lot of the time, after that altercation, you will either become really good friends or you'll just go your separate ways, and then that's it. Like, there's nothing more to be said on the matter. From my observations with women, they tend to keep going back, and keep on. We can define this as kind of a nagging type behaviour, right? In my opinion. Despite all the, oh well, you know, if you walk out of my life, then that's it, blah blah blah, you know, I'm not talking to you again. Guarantee they'll still be talking about the other person afterwards, for, you know, a time after that. But let's carry on with this post. I've attempted suicide, and mortality is one of my greatest fears. Now, here's the biggest thing that a lot of people don't understand about borderline personality disorder, and the whole difference between men and women. The reason why male suicide is higher than women is because, A, we know how to get shit done when we've had enough. Right? If we put our mind to it, right, and we've had enough, we get shit done. And I know a couple of guys that have unfortunately taken that path because they just couldn't deal with the life that they were living, or they just lost interest, and you know, they had their reasons, and it's a sad shame that they are gone. It is what it is. With the borderline, it's little more than attention seeking. And look, some people are going to be like well offended by that, and it's like, look, you got to be real about this. Any person that has had enough, they've had enough of their life to the point where they actually carefully plan it out to the T and succeed, right? They don't get to talk about it afterwards because they succeed. Borderlines, a lot of the time, it's just like, no, they want some attention, you know, and this sort of a thing. Again, if you, the correlation I personally make between BPD and a lot of these women, whereas they say they have borderline personality disorder, it's like, look, I'm not discrediting and saying that they haven't got it. I'm sure that they have in a lot of cases. In other cases, I think they just use it as an excuse to get away with bullshit, because it's just like, it's a green card to do whatever you want to whoever you want. And, oh, I've got this wrong with me. It's like, no, you just weren't fucking brought up properly. You know, something happened somewhere along the line, and just no. And I'm not going to go into the link with the other sort of cluster Bs at this point with regards autism, Asperger's, and that sort of a thing, because that is a different kettle of fish altogether a lot of the time, which people they won't go with. A lot of people that claim to have BPD are little more than fucking lazy, in my opinion. They just want an excuse to get away with bullshit. They don't want to be held accountable for their actions. In other words, they want to be treated like children a lot of the time, and that's just it. They just want to be pampered, paid attention to, you know, and it's exhausting. This is why I say, if you've been in a relationship with someone like that, it's exhausting for the other person, because all of their time has to be dedicated to them. And if you start slipping up, it gets used against you. And then you get made out to be the villain, regardless of whether it's your fault or not. And needless to say, it is your fault because they said so. So yeah, I've attempted suicide, and mortality is one of my greatest fears. Now, one of their greatest fears is being called out on their bullshit, and it actually being proven. That is actually one of their greatest fears. Accountability and responsibility for their actions. I've screamed in rage and whispered gently. Well, of course they scream in rage. They're histrionic. It is part of the cluster B, histrionic personality disorder. Same thing. They're all about the drama, all about look at me, look at me, look at me. And then they give the other sort of side of it. Oh, and I've whispered gently. Of course you've whispered gently. A lot of time it's to reel someone into your world of fuckery. I'm sure there's a lot of borderlines out there who fucking hate me right now. But look, am I wrong? Probably not. I've mutilated my body, and I've also decorated it with artwork. And again, self-harming, again, that is another sort of scream for help. And a lot of people would also argue with tattoos being a thing for body mutilation, or and again, the sort of mindset and the stigma that tattoos used to have from when I was younger to what they are now. A lot of the time, people with tattoos were people that were in prison. So they'd done something wrong according to the social norms, and they've been sent inside, and then they come out with tattoos. And it's not that it was necessarily a ritual thing. It's just something that, well, you've branded that individual with their criminality, be it a thing or not. And so a lot of the time, as a way of owning that, they would get tattoos. And and again, I'm sure if any of you are aware with biker culture, you all know there are certain tattoos that relate to certain things and all of that. But these days it's seen as more of a expression, right? Which I kind of do and don't have issue with, because there are lots of people out there with some really lovely artwork, and I really do appreciate it. And this is also a difficult one, because sometimes, people do get tattoos for different reasons. I've got tattoos for different reasons. They have different meanings. Whether I tell people what they're about is a different matter. But, a lot of the time, if you're in it for the drama, oh, look at me, then that's what you're going to be in it for, right? And I haven't got much time for people like that. If you like the artwork, that's fine. That's absolutely cool. It's your body, do what you want, right? But when it comes to using it in a case of, oh yeah, I've also decorated an artwork, it's like, man, it's just red flag central, man. I like this bit as well, actually. I've felt emotion to full intensity, in brackets, anger, sadness and disdain. And I've felt every emotion to full intensity, love, passion and happiness. So have a lot of other people, But this is it with the borderline. It's that, oh yeah, it's all about me. Fuck you and your feelings and what you've been through. This is about me. That is pretty much, and this is why narcissistic and borderline personality disorders are so closely linked together. They're practically the same thing. Practically. I have despised the ground I walk on, as if poison was left in each footstep. Now, I can kind of relate a little bit close to that one, because, yes, a lot of the time these people do leave a trail of destruction behind them. The lives that they have contributed towards the destruction. Not necessarily the end, but where people have been involved with these types of characters, and they found that they've lost their social groups, they've lost their friends, they've lost family members through the whole smear campaigns, chatting shit within the social group in order for the sake of putting themselves a little bit above the other. It's to do with the sort of pecking order, I suppose. But yeah, they do leave poison in each footstep, and they do leave a trail of destruction behind them. I have also cherished the ground I walk on, thanking it for always being able to withstand the weight of me and all that I encompass within. And again, that sounds quite sort of deep and everything, but again, a lot of the time it's very superficial. I use these dialects as I'm reading again. I use these dialects as examples to show that people with BPD are not defined by symptomatic behaviours, but they are. If you meet someone that is more in a physical sort of sense. Because again, with BPD, a lot of the time it is to do with language. It is to do with a lot of the time they're, I would say, probably less likely to get into a physical altercation. But even if they do, and if they come off worse, they're going to play the victim either way. Again, it does sort of come to that thing. That's another video that I do need to cover, but it's one of the ones I've tried to do, but it's real difficult to sort of pinpoint without making myself look like a complete prick. But I will get around to doing that video. But no, absolutely, you know, that they are defined by their symptomatic behaviours. Oh, it's not my fault. It's just, no, it is your fault because you're not being held accountable. And when you do get held accountable, it's still someone else's fault, or it's, oh, I can't change that. No, it's just lazy. You can't be bothered to change it a lot of the time. I'm, you know, talking to the air here. And it's like, I have interests, talents, passions, and characteristics separate from BPD. Well, yeah, but again, they don't necessarily define the individual either. If you, not that I have borderline, but to give an example, there are times when I'll go out on one of my motorcycles, right? And people could say, oh, well, you've got some kind of split personality because, you know, oh, like one day you're on a chopper, and then the next day you're on a pocket rocket, and then the day after that you're in a fast car, or you're whatever, right? So, yeah, and again, people sort of like, it's like, no, none of these things define me as a person. They are just